Two balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Matt Moreno. Matt, when the offseason began, this story felt too good to be true. It felt unbelievable that Freddie Freeman was actually available, that he would actually sign with the Dodgers, and yet news started to trickle in throughout the night that a 6-year, $162 million deal was progressing, that things were being finalized, and then finally Kylie McDonald and Jeff Passan of ESPN confirm Freddie Freeman, Los Angeles Dodgers, 6 years. How are we feeling, Matt?
Oh, man. Obviously, there's excitement throughout social media right now. Everybody's, going crazy. I think there's a little bit of relief, too. At least for me on a personal level, I know that I'll sleep a lot better tonight instead of, waking up pretty much every hour on the hour at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. just to see if maybe he agreed, in the twilight hours of the morning. And now, you'll get him to camp, hopefully, I imagine within a day or two. If he's been in California, which it seems like during the offseason, he should be there pretty quickly and playing in games before it's, probably by early next week would be my guess.
What an unbelievable roller coaster of emotions. I mean, obviously, we could zoom out and go big picture. And the Dodgers pre-lockout, obviously, Corey Seager leaves, signs a massive contract. So there's the Dodgers are going to be worse than last year. Obviously, Clayton Kershaw at the time was an unknown. Chris Taylor had come back. Kenley Jansen remains an unknown. Joe Kelly has since left. But then the Freddie Freeman rumors start right before the lockout. And it's like, this might happen, but everyone's like, really? I mean, obviously, he's going to go back to the Braves. He's been there his whole career. He is as synonymous with the Braves. This would be like Justin Turner having left a couple of years ago. It's just a guy who has become synonymous with the team. Clayton Kershaw, if he had signed with the Texas Rangers. And then the lockout happens, and everything freezes, and then we come out of it, and it's like, surely now he will sign with the Braves. But there were reports a week ago that this was imminent, that there were teams involved, and the teams kept changing. The Dodgers stayed consistent. They stayed through the whole time, and now it's done. MLB.com reporting that the Rays made a strong push at Freddie Freeman, and the Dodgers' willingness to go to that 6th year, $160 million, that might have been the difference, all things considered. I'll be honest, Matt, when we've talked, I would have given him $680. I was perfectly comfortable with an extra $18 million tacked onto this. I said no to the Corey Seager deal because I thought the money was crazy. This deal, I can't stress enough. There is nothing crazy about this deal. I'm being perfectly honest. I don't see a bad year on here. I'm not worried about the 6th year with Freddie Freeman. Even if you just measure it out and give him 5 for $150, we're paying him $12 million for that 6th year. And oh, by the way, there's a universal DH. He plays the easiest position to age at, which is first base. He's been incredibly consistent. He's a model citizen, yada, yada, yada. I can't believe, are you surprised that 6 for $162 are the numbers that ended up getting this done?
A little bit, just because, if we want to backtrack going into the offseason, I think you and I both agreed that Freddie Freeman wasn't somebody who was on our radar, really, because we thought, the Braves will get this done. Obviously, they have about a month before a lockout was probably coming. And then once that didn't happen, I thought, okay, maybe this will end up happening. Maybe he'll end up leaving. But then part of me did feel like, are the Braves going to realize, hey, we kind of have to come to our senses, if you will, and keep the hometown hero? Once it was evident that they pretty much weren't going to budge, it seemed, on 5 years, that's what every report had kind of been. I thought, okay, this is really in play now. What's surprising to me now at this point was that Freeman still got the 6th year, because every team that he had kind of been connected to over the past week or so ended up going in a different direction. The Braves took, a preemptive strike to trade for Matt Olson and then sign him to an extension on top of that. The Blue Jays obviously traded for Matt Chapman. The Yankees re-signed Anthony Rizzo. So when it started to feel like the only team left really that makes sense for you is the Dodgers. And then that shifted some leverage back to the Dodgers. But in retrospect, like you just said, the report is that maybe they needed to do the 6th year because the Rays were heavily involved, which credit to the Rays, a small market team, actually going for it, because as we've seen the past couple of days, the Reds and the Oakland A's certainly are not. But here we are, 6 years. I mean, I was comfortable with that if that's what it took. And he's somebody I agree with you.
I think it was Chad Moriyama who tweeted just after the signing, where it was basically like, it felt like every time somebody signed, like every time the Blue Jays or Yankees signed somebody, two other mystery team names. Oh, now the Red Sox are interested. Now the Rays, like how serious is it? But on the flip side, Bob Nightingale reported just a few days ago that the Dodgers offer was allegedly 4 years. So clearly they go to 6. Clearly they get this deal done. And Freddie Freeman's a Dodger. I'm looking at the chat. If you see me looking down, it's because we've got an unbelievably flooded chat. It's an amazing deal. It's going to be impossible to keep up with. But folks joining us on YouTube, folks joining us on Facebook, thank you. I see lots of people fired up about this deal. People have got questions about what this means for Trey Turner. There's all sorts of stuff going on. We're going to get to some questions here in just a little bit. But let's focus on Freddie Freeman and what the Dodgers are getting. Let me run through some numbers for you. If you follow the show, you know I'm a numbers guy. But Freddie Freeman, he's 32 years old. He'll turn 33 this September. Okay, we're looking through his years. I think one of the things I love about Freddie Freeman is the level of consistency. I've said this number a bunch of times. The last 4 years, he has missed just 7 games. Now, when you miss 7 games, that doesn't mean you're injured. That means you probably got 7 days off. He did not miss a game in 2018. He missed 4 in 2019, played every game in 2020, and missed 3 in 2021. But you look down at his numbers, I mean, the batting average, the on-base percentage, all these numbers are incredibly consistent. He's hitting right around 300. In fact, last year he hit 300, a 393 on-base percentage, 503 slugging percentage. The 503 number was actually one of the lower marks. The year before, he had an OPS of 1100. I believe that was the MVP year. Of course, the Dodgers end up knocking Freddie Freeman and the Braves out in that. But even if you look at some of the like go back a few years, if you look at the last 5 years, who in Major League Baseball has accumulated the most wins above replacement over the past 5 seasons? Freddie Freeman is 11th on that list. It goes Mike Trout, Mookie Betts, Jose Ramirez, Aaron Judge, Anthony Rendon, Francisco Lindor, Nolan Arenado, Alex Bregman, Kristen Yelich, Xander Bogaerts, and then Freddie Freeman. Over the last 5 years, he is the 11th best player in all of baseball. What about the last 3? Guess what? Still the 11th best player in all of baseball. Trey Turner jumps up that list. He's number 6 on that. So you're getting a guy who's incredibly consistent. But you're a Dodger fan. You're saying, hey, the key here is winning the World Series and going and getting it in October. Is this a guy that produces? You're probably not asking that because you remember playing Freddie Freeman in 2020 and you remember him matching Corey Seager. It seemed like home run for a home run. But how are these for some playoff statistics? In his career, okay? In his career, he is a 290 hitter in the postseason with an OPS of over 900. About 920 is his OPS. He's got 9 home runs in 42 games. So you're talking about 33, 34 home run pace with an OPS over 900 and a 290 batting average in series where pitchers are seeing you over and over and over again. It's an unbelievable fit. Not only that, he fills in the left-handed spot for Corey Seager. First base is a position open because Max Muncy plays second base. I could keep going. I'll get to some StatCast numbers here in a little bit, Matt. But when you think about Freddie Freeman, the player, what are you most excited to see with him coming to the Dodgers? Is there part of his game that you're like, this is what he brings that the Dodgers need?
I think he's the fact that he's just a complete player. And then if you want to boil it down specifically, at the plate, he's somebody who's pretty disciplined. He makes you kind of come into his zone. We saw him struggle a little bit in the NLCS last year, but even the first few games as that was happening, you always worried, like, was that one at bat in the 4th inning or the 5th inning, was that going to be the one that finally unlocked him? And sure enough, once the series shifted to Dodger Stadium, he did sort of find his swing. And then, the Dodgers were in a world of trouble anyway. So I think just his philosophy and approach and discipline just fits the lineup well and takes a lot of pressure off of, Max Muncy now, who's going to be, he's coming back obviously from a torn UCL. And as much as there's confidence that he's going to be ready for opening day and be healthy, you still never know. Obviously, like you said, fills the quote unquote left-handed bat that you lost with Corey Seager. Now, there's less pressure on Cody Bellinger. He can, sort of just be himself and gradually, improve, as opposed to maybe feeling like, opening day, I need to make up for all of last year in, this first series against the Rockies. He protects Justin Turner in the line. I mean, there's just so many different things you can do with the lineup. Like, it's ridiculous.
Jeff Passan tweeting, by the way, that this might be the best lineup he's seen in the last 20 years, which was comical because I texted that a friend and he's like, oh, so barely edging out last year's lineup when it was Corey Seager instead of Freddie Freeman. Right. But We'll get to that in a sec. Folks, by the way, if you're joining us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, if you're new to this, please subscribe. Dodger Blue 1958 here on YouTube. Subscribe, ring the notification bell. We've got live shows once a week. We've got recorded shows once a week. We put out new content every single day, so you definitely want to be tuned in here. But let's get back to Freddie Freeman and this tweet from Jeff Passan. Think about the Dodgers lineup. Now, I'm not going to necessarily say this is the exact order that it goes in, but you've got Trey Turner at the top, Mookie Betts second maybe, and Freddie Freeman third. That's probably your 1, 2, 3. In case you didn't hear, those are 3 of the top 11 players, according to wins above replacement, in all of Major League Baseball over the last 3 years. 3 of the top 11. Well, maybe it's a drop-off after that. Well, not quite. You've got Cody Bellinger, a former MVP. You've got Will Smith, who's one of the best hitters in all of baseball. Max Muncy, Chris Taylor, A.J. Pollock, who was unbelievable last year. Justin Turner. The list goes on and on and on. I think it's safe to say this is the best lineup the Dodgers have ever had. And part of that is because A.J. Pollock is coming off of a career year. Chris Taylor is coming off of one of the better seasons of his career. Will Smith continues to emerge and improve. And so while Cody Bellinger may be coming off of a down year, it feels like everybody else is coming off of an upswing, if you will. I mean, that lineup, like, what goes through your mind, Matt, when you think through those 9 guys? I mean, literally, and again, universal DH is in play. And so if Muncy is at second base and you pencil Chris Taylor into the DH spot, sort of rotating around, I mean, who bats ninth in that line? Chris Taylor, probably. A.J. Pollock batting 8th and Chris Taylor batting 9th. I mean, Cody Bellinger batting 7th? It's an absolute embarrassment of riches.
That's what I was going to get to, is you're basically looking at a scenario where Chris Taylor, A.J. Pollock, even Cody Bellinger on any given night can find themselves batting 8th or 9th in the lineup. And that's it's crazy when you think about the talent. Now, I will sort of add, to me, an AJ Pollock trade is still sort of a dark horse thing to me. I think he's coming off a strong year. I think they've committed this money to Freddie Freeman. Potentially, you're going to need a contract extension or at least talks with Trey Turner come free agency. You know, it wouldn't surprise me if they maybe try to see what they can get for Pollock. They do need starting pitching. So that wouldn't surprise me if that does happen. I'm not necessarily predicting that it will, but I just think that's something to keep an eye on. And even if you do trade him, the lineup is still plenty deep because you have Chris Taylor, who can get plenty of at-bats in left field. If Gavin Lux isn't potentially included in a trade package, he can play left field as well. So, you know, they'd still be fine if that does happen.
And Pollock, obviously, the appeal of Pollock is he's just under market value deal. Like, he's coming off one of his better seasons. He's pretty affordable for the production that you get. And so can you find a team? Yeah, maybe it's a 3-team trade where you get prospects in exchange for A.J. Pollock that you can then flip for sort of a back-of-the-rotation type of starter. Or maybe the Dodgers just say, hey, our pitching isn't the best, so we're just going to try and score 12 runs every single game. Who knows how that plays out?
Right.
Let me ask you a question, Matt, because this is something that's come up in the chat. It's something I've said before. And it's a question of Iris KL says, Freddie Freeman is better than Corey Seager. Sorry, but it's true. As we progressed through the offseason, when the Freddie Freeman rumors became plausible, I actually agree with Iris. If you said, Jeff, for the next however many, you can either sign the Corey Seager contract or you can sign the Freddie Freeman contract. Which would you choose? I would choose the Freddie Freeman contract every day of the week. The Corey Seager contract to me is crazy. Like, there are a lot of years at the end of that I think are going to be bad. I genuinely don't think any of the years on Freeman. But contracts aside, I actually think even for the next 2 to 3 years, I actually think Freddie Freeman is better for the reasons of he's going to miss way less games. Corey Seager has an injury history that we know of. Yes, Corey Seager is younger, but I don't think Freddie Freeman's falling off a cliff, at least in the not in the next 2 to 3 years. I think he's going to be more durable. I think he's more consistent. There's less of the roller coaster. Yes, we've seen the highs with Corey Seager, but if you followed the Dodgers for long enough, you know there are also stretches where it just seems a little bit mystifying. I think from a defensive perspective, Freddie Freeman probably a better defender at first than Corey Seager is at shortstop. So that's how I would kind of think through it. I love Corey Seager, the player. I love Corey Seager, the person. This is not a knock on Corey Seager. I'm just saying the guy who's one of the top 10 players in baseball, I would prefer over Corey Seager. Do you agree or disagree with that? And folks in the chat, I'd love to hear from you. Am I on an island here in saying that I would prefer Freddie Freeman over Corey Seager? Let me know. Matt, you respond, and I'll start looking through the comments.
Oh man, that's tough for me to say because
I knew
think
Daniel. I mean, Daniel's not in here. We know what Daniel would say to this answer, but I'm asking you. You seem like a more honest guy than Daniel, if we're being honest here.
What you get with Freddie Freeman, I think, is more consistency and obviously the health component, which is a huge factor. Like, you can't necessarily brush that aside. but I still would argue that Corey Seager has a
Okay.
higher ceiling, and so his highs are higher, than what you get with Freddie Freeman. But Freddie Freeman's basement then isn't as low as some of the valleys like you said, Corey Seager kind of sometimes starts to experience during any stretch of a season. So I guess the question then comes down to: do you want consistency, or would you rather have the guy who's capable of going on the crazy runs that we saw Seager put together, in the postseason in 2020?
Well,
There's something in my book. There's something to be said for consistency. As much as the Dodgers needed Seager to win the World Series, that was great. But consistency is valuable, and so is health.
My only response to that would be: Freddie Freeman matched Corey Seager home run for home run in that NLCS. So the run that Seager went on was matched by Freeman. And second of all, Freddie Freeman's ceiling was the MVP in 2020. Like his ceiling is an MVP winner. Now, shortened season, whatever. We're Dodger fans. We don't complain about the shortened season. We won the World Series that year, so there's no asterisk associated with any of it. But for me, those are the pluses there. Let me throw some StatCast numbers at you, and then we'll get into the comments here. Just looking at last year, expected batting average. So that's looking at sort of all sorts of metrics and deciding if luck was equal, what would your expected batting average would be? Freddie Freeman, 100th percentile, aka best in the league, okay? 96th percentile in expected slugging percentage, 98th percentile in expected weighted on-base average, 90th percentile max exit velocity, 85th percentile average exit velocity, 77th percentile hard hit and barrel percentage. This is a guy who's 87th percentile in walk percentage, 86th percentile in strikeout percentage. So he's elite at drawing walks. He's elite at not striking out. He's elite at hitting the ball hard. This guy does literally everything. Now, I don't know Freddie Freeman personally. By all accounts, he's an unbelievable person. Whenever you have those mic'd up moments and he's at first base, it always seems like a pleasant encounter. It seems like guys love Freddie Freeman. We know the story about his kids and sort of how they've been around. Obviously, we didn't love those stories during the NLCS in 2020, but we can enjoy them a little bit more now. But Freddie Freeman, unbelievable stuff when you look at this. And again, none of this is meant to be disrespectful to Corey Seager. I just think you have Trey Turner being able to play shortstop. Now Freddie Freeman being able to play first base. This is, weirdly enough, first and second were the best positions to go find someone. It just so happened that the best guy out there happens to play first base.
I think, another way to look at it, too, is if going into the offseason, would you rather have Corey Seager and Trey Turner, with Trey Turner playing out of position, which he's been a little bit more candid and open about these first few days in the spring training of saying, I'm glad to be back at shortstop. I think his quote was, "I felt like I was playing left-handed at second base." So would you rather have Trey Turner back in his natural position along with Freddie Freeman, or would you rather have Corey Seager at shortstop and then Trey Turner, playing second base?
No, I think it's a fair question. And for me, it's actually an easy one. Like, I would prefer Trey Turner at shortstop, and I would prefer, kind of going from there. But I can understand because Max Muncy, one of the two guys, is going to be out of position, right? So the question is it Trey Turner? Is it Max Muncy? Where do we go from there? Sorry, we're having some technical difficulties with Matt here. We'll see if we can get this sorted out.
Well, and also, Muncy has said he prefers to play second base too. So it's a little bit different with having to, quote unquote, move him out of position. And I think he's probably more comfortable there than Trey Turner was last year. I think Trey Turner was just able to play it because of the type of athlete that he is.
When we talked on this show, I was shocked to hear Max Muncy say that he actually prefers to play second base over first base. So that makes everyone happy. Let's get to some comments here. General Jonick says, "Dang, we're doing Daniel dirty tonight, huh?" We're not doing Daniel dirty tonight. Daniel is an unabashed driver of the Corey Seager fan club. And so, I know this. He's thrilled. Let's be honest. He's thrilled. There's no negativity here. He's had time to mourn the loss of his guy, Corey Seager. But anytime Corey Seager came up in conversation, it was like, oh, who's Daniel going to pick for the MVP of this series? It's always going to be Corey Seager. So there we go.
Who's the best player in baseball? Daniel always picked Corey Seager.
Okay, let's see. Cindy says, Freddie Freeman, much better for the team. Corey Seager will be happier elsewhere anyways. I mean, he's going to be happier because he signed a $325 million contract. So I definitely think that's helped. Caleb says they're both great. I agree with you on that. Edward makes a point. We've got a bunch of leaders on the team now. Justin Turner, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, among others. Obviously, Clayton Kershaw. We haven't even talked about some of the guys on the pitching side. William says Freddie Freeman, more power. I'd be curious to see whether Freeman has historically hit more home runs than Corey Seager. I would guess it's actually fairly similar, but I don't know. Freddie Freeman may be the edge there. Let's see. We got some Braves fans saying it's sad to see Freddie leave. We apologize for your loss, but we are very excited to have him here. Let's see. William says,
thank you for
yeah,
for being
totally.
cordial
It's
at least,
Southern
because
hospitality right there, Matt.
like we have Padres fans hopping into these, getting mad after they've been swept, and it just gets out of line.
Let's see. Iris says, loved Seager, Freeman, but he always made me a little bit nervous. Adam818 says Freddie is way better. Let's see. Heck yeah, Cesar says. I'm assuming that maybe he's just very excited.
He was
Marco
agreeing with me.
Echeverria says Andrew Friedman needs a statue built outside Dodger Stadium. I know they've got a Koufax statue coming soon. Is Andrew Friedman next in line in your estimation there, Matt?
Maybe not next in line, but he might be
Kershaw,
one of the
maybe
first
Kershaw's
10
maybe
that get
next
built.
in line and Friedman
Perhaps.
after him.
Perhaps.
Let's see. Somebody wants to know where Daniel is. There is a Lakers game, I believe, that's happening right now. So,
well, it ended, but he's handling like post-game duties and getting articles ready for the next day. It's been rough for them.
No kidding. Apologies to Laker fans. Obviously, we're Lakers fans. Lakers Nation, our friends over there.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's see. Yeah, it's so funny reading these comments, by the way, and lots of people saying Friedman and other people saying Freeman, and me getting very confused about who is referring to what at the first one. I'm going to have to get used to that one. So we're going to need a nickname, by the way, for Freddie Freeman. I mean, I'm sure he has one. I like shortening, like just Fred or something like that. I just like the old man name, so maybe that.
See, I was going to go the other way. I've seen Frederick thrown around, and I think I can get behind that.
Okay, Frederick. Yeah, I'm good with that. It's Frederick. Yeah, I was thinking, like, I call Will Smith Bill. So you could do like Bill and Fred's Excellent Adventure or something like that. You could do, like that's an idea. I'm just throwing out there. That's for the people.
Well, hey, okay, but they're not going to be hitting right back of each other. I just want to burst your bubble right now.
Yeah, as highly as Daniel thinks of Corey Seager, you can pencil me in for the Will Smith love on that side. Let's see. Yeah, Frederick, I'm seeing that. Freddie. Yeah, we got lots. Fred Dog. There we go. We need to get some more creativity there. Let's go big picture, and then folks that are joining, we'll get to some questions. I know, again, a lot of people asking about Trey Turner and where this all fits in. The Dodgers were already the favorites to win the World Series prior to adding one of the 10 best players in all of baseball. I should say 10 best hitters, not players, because obviously you throw pitchers in there and it kind of gets a little bit more convoluted. 10 best players in all of baseball. Is this how do you even evaluate a team that is already the favorite to win the World Series getting this much? I mean, is Freddie Freeman, how big of a difference? Like, does this make a noticeable impact in your expectations for the Dodgers in 2022? It feels like a silly question, but if the expectation was already best record in the National League, win the NL West, like, do you feel dramatically more confident about that today, Matt?
I think I do, because it's another, like we said, it's another big bat. It's another consistent player, and there still are some concerns with starting pitching. And yes, we agree that it's something that can potentially be addressed at the trade deadline come the season, but that's also, we don't necessarily know who's going to be available. Like it could be a year where, there isn't necessarily a real impact starting pitcher who's going to be on the block. So I think what he does is just give you more of a buffer there. Like I said earlier, with, Cody Bellinger and Max Muncy looking to rebound from their respective injuries and or struggles. He helps there. In terms of expectations, I mean, yeah, like the Dodgers already, I think, were expected to win the World Series this year. I don't think that changes. I guess all it does really is allow for more of a letdown if they don't, right? Like, fans are going to be disappointed if they fell short anyway. Now they'll really be disappointed because you have this lineup with a bunch of MVPs in it.
It's fascinating because when you looked at the Dodger roster a week ago, if you just ignored any rumor that was out there, you would have clearly said, hey, the Dodgers' greatest need is starting pitching. On the flip side, you would have looked at what is out there and available on the starting pitching market and said, there's nothing. There's literally nobody that belongs in the top 8 of a Dodger starting rotation that is currently a free agent. And so you would have said, oh, the Dodgers need to make a trade. But it's fascinating that the Dodgers actually just went the other direction, at least for now. Who knows? There might be a trade around the corner. But at least for now, they basically said, screw it. We have Buehler, we have Urias, 2 of the top 10 pitchers in all of baseball. We have Kershaw, who was very good last year before he got hurt. But if we're being fair, we don't know what we're going to get out of Clayton Kershaw from a health perspective. Says he's healthy. He's back. I freaking love Clayton Kershaw, so I'll just take his word on that. Then from there, you've got Andrew Heaney. You've got Tony Gonsolin. Obviously, Trevor Bauer is the big elephant in the room. His leave has been extended. It seems like there's potentially a suspension coming. It will not count as time served last year. That's been the latest news on Trevor Bauer. Obviously, again, that's not me telling you what I think should happen with Trevor Bauer. That is just what is out there. So the Dodgers have basically said, rather than upgrading that group, we're just going to try and outscore you. Like, we're just going to go upgrade the position offensively that we could upgrade, and our lineup's going to be fierce. I mean, we're just going to try and score 7 runs a game. And when Buehler and Urias are on the mound, it's not going to be fair. When Kershaw's on the mound, it's not going to be fair. And guess what? If Gonsolin's out there as our number 5 guy and he gives up 5 runs in 5 innings, okay, fine. We feel really good about the bullpen coming in behind them. And guess what? Like, all 9 of the guys that we are going to throw out there are not going to have a bad night on the same night. In fact, 7 of them are not going to have a bad night on the same night. And so unless the sequencing goes terribly wrong, this Dodger offense is going to be an absolute force. Which brings me to the question of, are the Dodgers done, Matt? There's somebody's people joking, like, go sign Nick Castellanos. Do the Dodgers trade Gavin Lux? That's something that we've talked about now that Gavin Lux is kind of the 10th man, which we all remember last year. You need more than 9 guys in order to play baseball, in order to sustain yourself through a season. We know Max Muncy, probably not 100% quite yet. So Lux is going to be a necessary part. But now that he doesn't have a starting position, do you go shop Gavin Lux and call up the Reds and say, how unavailable is Luis Castillo, which is the latest report? See if the A's have any pitchers left that you feel good about. I mean, do you start shopping a guy like Lux, or is this the roster that the Dodgers go in with? Because again, keep in mind, the 40-man roster is full. So to sign Freddie Freeman, at least one guy's got to come off. The same goes for anybody that's going out from here on out.
I think you at least make the phone calls to see, what could possibly come of them, but you don't have to make a move right now. Re-signing, like we talked about on some of our other shows, re-signing Clayton Kershaw was key because, yes, he's not going to be, the 2017 Clayton Kershaw that we're used to, but as the 3rd starter, basically, like, he's very good. And so now with your rotation, you have 3 starting pitchers that you can pretty much rely on every single time they take the mound. Whereas without him, you were going to have 2 and then having to fill in the blanks and figure it out. And like you just touched on, free agency market wasn't exactly full of a ton of attractive options. With Gavin Lux, I think you probably have to look into trading him just because he's arguably your most valuable. I mean, outside of like Diego Cartaya and prospects that the Dodgers won't trade, he's your most valuable trade chip. And to some degree, potentially right now, because you could get a team that says, oh, we saw enough late in the year. If he just settles into more of a regular role, he could, continue to develop or whatever the case is. He's still really young. And if you trade somebody like him and you need depth, you do have, Zach McKinstry coming back to fill that similar utility role. Obviously, you have Chris Taylor. So you would be protected there on that end. But, I don't think you go after like a Nick Castellanos at this point. Your position players, you're set. Like there's too much depth.
Keep in mind one thing with Lux is Trey Turner is only signed for this year. So there is a chance that the Dodgers have a hole at shortstop a year from now. And as you said, Gavin Lux is still incredibly young. Like the Dodgers, yes, would it be a bummer if Gavin Lux spends an entire year basically coming off the bench? Would that be ideal for his development? No, of course not. But it's not like the Dodgers are like and then a year after that, he's a free agent and the Dodgers have to make a decision. They have him under team control for another 4 or 5 years, I think at least. And so keep in mind that. Now, they've got some other shortstop prospects, Jacob Amaya, Gorbit Vivas, a couple guys that are on the 40-man roster who could play shortstop. But those guys are, 1 or 2 years away, and they were not the top 5 prospect in all of baseball that Gavin Lux was. As well as add in the fact that last year he seemed to hint at some versatility just because of his athleticism. He played, obviously not a great center field in the postseason last year, but he had never played it. Like literally there was no training, there was no months of offseason to prepare for it. And so if the Dodgers think they can turn him into a competent shortstop / second base / center field / left field, basically a Chris Taylor type defensively, with the bat that they think is still going to develop. So I would actually be surprised if they traded Gavin Lux. If they could go get a Luis Castillo type for him, then maybe. But I mean, outside of getting like a guy that you pencil in on the level of a Clayton Kershaw, where he's at like a number 3, number 4 that you feel great about, a guy who's probably a number 2 somewhere else, I don't know if I would trade Gavin Lux for that. Because the other piece is, now that you've added Freeman's $162 million, you've also, like, the competitive balance threshold is something. So the fact that Gavin Lux is going to cost you basically nothing for the next 5 years is a valuable asset for a team that needs to surround their Mookie Betts, highly paid, Freddie Freeman now, highly paid. You need to be able to surround those guys with dudes that are on minimum contracts in order to make it work, which leads to sort of the next obvious thing is, do you think this Freddie Freeman deal obviously changes? How do you think it impacts the Dodgers moving forward? Trey Turner, free agent next year. Cody Bellinger, Walker Buehler, Julio Urias. I think 2 of those 3 guys are 2 years away from free agency. One of them is 3 years away from free agency. Obviously, Andrew Friedman is an intelligent person. He's thought this through. Do you think this was, well, just sign the guy now and don't worry about, we don't know what Trey Turner's market is going to be a year from now. So don't ignore Freddie Freeman for the hope and the possibility of extending Trey Turner? Or did they say, we actually like Freddie Freeman more than maybe one of the 3 guys that I just mentioned, 4 guys I just mentioned?
I think probably the biggest impact it had is that now I highly doubt Trey Turner is signed to a contract extension during the season. I think that'll end up running to free agency, and then the Dodgers will sort of evaluate there, maybe what is market, how it sort of takes shape, who might be available. Maybe a shortstop is going to end up getting traded, and who knows? The Dodgers jump in that way and fill the need.
But keep in mind that Trevor Bauer's contract likely comes off a year from now, and David Price's contract comes off a year from now. So that's a massive amount of money that gets freed up.
Right. So it could also be, just a timing mechanism that now, had they not completed this deal for Freddie Freeman, I would have bet okay, they're going to look to lock up Trey Turner before you even get to free agency, because you sort of have that money to spend. I think another potential too is if Trey Turner were to leave, maybe they plug in Chris Taylor at shortstop for a year or two as sort of a stopgap option. As much as they value his versatility and have prioritized that and keeping him in that role, he obviously could play shortstop in a pinch. So that kind of ties into, maybe if the right trade for Gavin Lux comes up, maybe, you're able to do it because you do have Chris Taylor. That being said, I wouldn't expect, I think Gavin Lux would have to probably perform well for at least the first 2 months of the season before the Dodgers would really get the value that they would be looking for in trading him.
Again, folks just joining us, this is the biggest crowd we've ever had, so we appreciate you joining us. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, Dodger Blue 1958. Ring the notification bell. Again, we've got content that hits you every single day of the week on here. We've got live post-game shows throughout the season. We've got weekly long-form shows as well. So please subscribe, ring the notification bell while you're here. We're glad to hear we've got a great turnout again. People fired up. Freddie Freeman, 6 years, $162 million. He will be a Los Angeles Dodger through the end of his age 37 season. Let's get to that, because that's the last piece of this equation that we kind of haven't talked about. I have said numerous times the 6th year does not scare me. Again, Corey Seager is younger, but the 10th year of Corey Seager scares me a heck of a lot more than the 6th year of Freddie Freeman. Freddie Freeman, I'll repeat again, has missed 7 games over the past 4 seasons. He plays first base, which is the easiest on your body. No offense to Max Muncy, who found out the hard way that 99% is not the same as 100% on that one. The universal DH is now added. This is a guy that is not dependent upon his athleticism, right? It's not like a Trey Turner where one of his biggest assets is his speed. It's a smooth swing that you imagine is going to age gracefully. We're talking about Freddie Freeman at the end of his contract will be the age that Justin Turner is now. I have no reason to believe that Freddie Freeman will age worse than Justin Turner. Freddie Freeman is starting from a better place. He is a better player than Justin Turner ever was. So even if he declines at the same rate that Justin Turner has declined, and Justin Turner is still a incredibly good and valuable baseball player, even if he declines at the same rate, he will be a better player than Justin Turner is in his age 37 season, which will be an incredibly valuable player in Major League Baseball. So for me, the 6th year does not terrify me at all. The $162 million does not terrify me at all. Again, I penciled in 6 for 180. So we got a bargain here. We saved ourselves $3 million a year. Where are you on that? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of people that say, hey, I wish it were 5. Okay, 5, 150. I would take a 6th year at $12 million, right? I would take the 6th year at $15 million. Yeah. Does the 6th year worry you with Freddie Freeman? Again, he'll be 37. He'll turn 38 at the very end of that year.
No, I mean, there's not much concern. All it is just acknowledging, yes, you would expect there to be some decline at that point. But like I've said before, I think the Dodgers probably win a World Series within the first 4 years of his contract. And if you do that, then that's it. It doesn't. He could be
Right.
a 200 hitter in that 6th year, and the signing would have been absolutely worth it. All the points you just touched on make sense. I mean, sure, he's not going to be, like I just alluded to with Clayton Kershaw, he's not going to be the player he was, 3 years ago when we're looking at the final year of that contract, but so be it. I mean, it's the final year at that point. And like you kind of touched on, had the Dodgers really drawn a line in the sand at 5 years, and that cost them
1,000%.
Sort of kick yourself over the 1 year, right? So I mean, it's fine. It's not $300 million that we're talking here. It's not even $200 million. It's not even $180 million. I think it's a good deal for both parties. And like I said earlier, it kind of got to the point where it really made sense for Freddie Freeman and the Dodgers to find a way.
Charles Seager, by the way, saying you're being disrespectful to Justin Turner. I'm not. I'm saying at age 37, Justin Turner is still a very, very, very good baseball player. On most teams, he would be one of the 2 or 3 best players on that team. All I'm saying is Freddie Freeman at his peak is way better than Justin Turner. Freddie Freeman is a MVP candidate. He's a guy who carried a team to a World Series title. So I'm just saying if Freddie Freeman starts at a 9.5 out of 10 and Justin Turner's peak was an 8 out of 10, and that I don't think that's disrespectful to Justin Turner. If it's coming across that way, I do not intend that at all. But I'm saying if Justin Turner has gone from an 8 to a 7, and that means Freddie Freeman's going to go from a 9.5 to an 8.5, at 37, that's going to be an incredibly valuable thing. I mean, we could talk about Albert Pujols, who's 42 and still competent. Now, Freddie Freeman at 37 is going to be way better than the Albert Pujols we saw last year. But there are guys like Scherzer that go way deeper into their careers. And I'll keep saying it. The fact that he's a first baseman, the fact that his swing is not predicated on athleticism, the fact that the universal DH is a thing in the National League now and will be presumably for the next 6 years at least, all of those things make it so that I am not worried at all about Freddie Freeman. I'll say it again if you're joining us now. The 10 years, $325 million that Seager got terrified me. When that contract was signed, when the 3 years, $100 million or whatever Scherzer got from the Mets, when that contract was signed, those two guys were dudes that I would have loved to re-sign. At those numbers, I said, I get it. I'm glad we did not engage at that level. Yes, I would like to have Corey Seager. I would not like to have a $33 million contract on my books for the next 10 years with that guy. Freddie Freeman, I can't overstate. I have no reservations about this contract. Normally, when you wade into free agency, you have to eat something that you don't want to eat. You get 5 years at good value, and then you have to tack on 6, 7, and 8 and feel terrible about them and worried about them and say, we'll deal with those in the future. I thought this contract, I guessed high on this contract. I guessed 6 for 180. They got 6 for 162. I genuinely think Freeman in year 6 is going to be an asset. It will not be a David Price we've got $17 million sitting on the books. We just got to wait for it to expire. I genuinely think if you just do 5 for 150 and $12 million as the 6th year, I genuinely think we're going to look at that $12 million and say, it's a good deal. We're getting value, surplus value out of him. Yeah. Keep in mind, competitive balance threshold is going up, right, over the next 5 years. And so I feel really, really good about this. Let's dive into some questions. We've got tons of folks in here, so throw your questions there. And again, folks on Facebook, folks on YouTube, I am not being disrespectful to Justin Turner. Please don't misunderstand me. Matt, am I saying anything that needs to be cleaned up?
No. And this isn't a platform where we're gonna do something like that.
Totally.
We respect the team with still being critical of players, and to say that somebody might age more gracefully than others, I don't think is disrespectful. I mean, I think you could apply the same concept to Max Scherzer and Clayton Kershaw. Scherzer's velocity is still holding at a level that Clayton Kershaw has never really touched, other than maybe the first couple years in his career. So no disrespect at all. Justin Turner is great to us, and we just analyzing the team and trying to make sure that you guys aren't going to be worried about the 6th year of Freddie Freeman.
Totally, yeah. And I mean, I guess that's a comparison. It's like if I said Clayton Kershaw is starting from a better place than Zach Greinke or something like that. That's not disrespectful to Zach Greinke because it speaks more what I think of Clayton Kershaw and how elite I think he is. So there you go. Apologies if I threw shade on Justin Turner. If people are hearing that, so be it. We got some people. Okay, let's see. Some people said Weston D, 37 today isn't 37 10 to 20 years ago. I think that's another fair point. You see guys like LeBron and what they're doing and Tom Brady. I mean, I just think we have science and nutrition and information now that we don't have. So I think that's a great point. I love that people are still joining, just realizing now that Freddie Freeman has signed for the Dodgers. Okay, let's see. Greetings from Brazil. Luis, shout out to you in Brazil. Okay, good. Laura says, we know you love JT. Jeff, thank you. Let's get to some questions here. Lots of people asking about Trevor Bauer. Look, I wish like we had answers for you. People are saying, why don't we think that time served would count? That's just the latest reports. The latest reports are that the stuff with his administrative leave was extended another week. And the speculation is that he would not get credit for time served. Why that is, I have no idea. We were saying before that report that we just assumed he would, that we assumed that he would not be suspended beyond time served. But if he is suspended for any point of time, the reporting is, I believe it was John Morosi, but I could be off on that. Ken Rosenthal. Good catch there. Ken Rosenthal has said that it would not count. So Ken Rosenthal is a guy that you can trust. We joked. There are guys that have tweeted things about Freddie Freeman that none of us necessarily went and clicked publish on our stories until we got ESPN or The Athletic or somebody to confirm. But Ken Rosenthal is a great one. So let's see. Folks got questions in here. We can try and get. Here we go. Derek says, is it worth signing Jansen for 1 year if you can get him for $10 million? He says under 10. I don't think he would get under 10, but we've sort of touched on this one. Now you've got Freddie Freeman. One way to think about this is, do you get more aggressive now? Like, do you just say, hey, we've got Trey Turner for 1 more year. Let's just go all in once again. Let's go get Kenley Jansen. Let's just improve in every facet we possibly can because we're ready to roll. How would you approach the Kenley Jansen situation?
I mean, well, first I'll push back a little bit and say that signing Freddie Freeman is basically going all in at this point because, you don't there's uncertainty with Trevor Bauer's contract and you may owe at least a portion of that money probably. So the Dodgers really are going for it again. And, Andrew Friedman is kind of there was a reputation and it still sort of hovered over him up until the past year or so. Maybe it was that all he cared about was the future and holding on to prospects. But here we are again of him putting the current team in the best position to win and compete. So I think they've already, gone all in. If Kenley's available for open to 1 year at a team friendly salary,
what's team friendly? Define team friendly for me.
I think it would need to be probably about nine or 8 million, which I don't see him doing. And maybe 10, I guess, if you really want to. At this point, what's another million in the luxury tax?
They are nearing the Steve Cohen line. I would bet though.
That's true. I don't see him going for that. So,
I think your point is well received that the Dodgers did not need Freddie Freeman. The fact that they signed him qualifies as going all in. It is just funny to think like Kenley Jansen added to this bullpen would make them better. Like at some point, do you just say, screw the margins, we're just going to make this team better? Like Nick Castellanos, a guy we mentioned earlier, he does not tangibly make the team better from the sense of there isn't a starting spot for him. Like right now, he's coming off the bench. He wouldn't want that. The Dodgers wouldn't want that. Whereas Kenley Jansen, like you just pencil him into the back of the bullpen and say, there's our closer. He was fantastic last season. We moved Blake Trinan around, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's a fair question. Brandon asks, Edwin Rios. Do we think Edwin Rios is going to do any good this year? I'll say this for Rios straight off the bat. I think a move like this is helpful in the sense that there is a lot less pressure. I think if the Dodgers' 9 best players were all in the starting lineup, and after that you're looking at McKinstry and you're looking at Edwin Rios and you're looking at Luke Raley or whoever, Austin Barnes, and just saying like, okay, we need 1 or 2 of you guys to step up. I think this eases that pressure a little. Because I think those guys are going to get less playing time, which might sound like it hurts them. But I actually think if Gavin Lux sticks around, he becomes the de facto 10th man. And then there's just less pressure on Rios. He can ease his way into the lineup. He can ease in and not feel like the pressure is on him. So I think it's good for Edwin Rios. I'm still a believer in Edwin Rios. He struggled mightily last year before out for the year with the shoulder injury. Presumably the shoulder was bothering him and contributing to the rough start. We know prior to that he had one of the best home runs per at bat rates in Major League history. So I'm still pro Edwin Rios. I think this is good for him, and I think he's going to have a not like a crazy year because I don't think he's going to get unbelievable amounts of playing time, but I think he'll be an upgrade over the bench the Dodgers had last year.
I agree with you. The only, I guess, difference is I see him spending a lot of time in AAA this year. I think the Dodgers have, barring, like I said, maybe a potential A.J. Pollock trade or trading Gavin Lux, I think they have enough depth right now on the position player side to let Rios get regular at-bats at AAA. It's also worth remembering that, from Adrian Gonzalez to Cody Bellinger to several players before them, when they've discussed shoulder surgeries and coming back, they typically aren't at their, where they were, I guess if you want to call it fully healthy or, full strength, until kind of the second year removed. So I think this, the expectations for Rios need to be tempered a little bit this season, just because he is going to be coming off of that surgery. He still is a little bit of an inexperienced player who hasn't yet established himself in the majors. So I see him really, being in OKC.
That's a fair point.
Something
I hadn't thought about before. So I think that makes total sense to me. Aaron Vaughn's got a comment. I don't know how accurate this is, but the report I guess he says is that the Braves offered Freddie Freeman 5 years and $135 million was the reported offer. Basically, all the Dodgers did is tack on a 6th year at the same AAV, so $27 million a year. So the Braves refusing to go to a 6th year at $27 million a year is reportedly what cost them Freddie Freeman. That, to answer your question, yes, I would be pissed if I was a Braves fan.
Yeah. I think what's interesting with the Braves, though, and we talked about it in some of our other shows, it sort of seemed like they were ready to move on from Freddie Freeman before he was. And I think that the trade for Matt Olson definitely caught me by surprise. But maybe they felt like they needed to make that move to avoid losing leverage, because had Freeman agreed to a contract with somebody else, then the Braves are suddenly going to look desperate. So then to make that trade and the next day followed up with this huge extension, I think tells me that the front office had just made their decision that they weren't going to re-sign Freeman. Short of him coming back and saying, I'll sign for 4 years, 5 years at whatever salary you want.
Yeah, because they get Olson, who's younger, and you could make an argument is at least in the same sort of stratosphere that Freddie Freeman lives in as a player, but it cost them. I mean, they had to. The money is a little bit less on Olson because he's had, I think, 2 or 3 years of team control left, and so they bought all those out. Yeah. I think the contracts will end like a little bit earlier on Olson, a little bit cheaper, et cetera, et cetera. But they had to give up Christian Pache, who was a top 100 prospect at one point. They had one other guy, I think, that was a solid and a really good prospect. So, yes, you get younger and you get a guy who's similar, but man, you had a guy that everybody loved, who was a World Series hero, who you knew how he fit in the clubhouse, you knew how he fit in the lineup, you knew how he performed in that stadium, and to go and trade prospects for a guy that is because we've seen it before, right? We've seen the guy who's an unbelievable player go to a situation that for one reason or another didn't work. All Matt Olson is going to hear in Atlanta is, if he struggles, is like, you're not Freddie Freeman. Not quite as good as Freddie Freeman. Freddie Freeman probably would have got a hit there. Freddie Freeman probably makes that pick at first base. So it just feels so risky to me. And the GM, Alex Anthopoulos of the Braves, is a guy who was under Friedman with the Dodgers. So obviously there's a connection there. But in the sense of like, hey, he just built a World Series winning team. So I give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm glad I'm not a Braves fan that had to try and wrap my mind around this. Because, again, to a Braves fan, this would have been the equivalent of, like, when Kershaw signed his 3-year, $100 million deal, 4 years ago. If the Dodgers said, hey, sorry, Clayton, as much as you mean to the city, as much as you mean to the team, as much of a legend as you are, we're going to do 2 for $55. Sorry, that's it. I mean, like, that would be the feeling to a Dodger fan that compares to a Braves fan losing Freddie Freeman, I would imagine. And that's brutal. Let's see if we've got any questions left in here. I love people on Twitter. I saw Trey Turner had like 3 of the eyes emojis, and then Justin Turner responded with like 6 right after. What was the story? There was somebody asked a couple years, or was it David Vassay? He had a report a few days ago that like when Matt Olson got traded to the Braves, there was some excitement in the Dodger clubhouse.
Yeah, I think there was, sort of a feeling at Camelback Ranch that, okay, like, the Braves are out. Freddie Freeman is sort of our guy. He didn't name which players, obviously. He didn't reveal something like that. But, the players are in tune with what's going on. And I think especially, some of the veterans like a Justin Turner, like a Clayton Kershaw, they're probably a little bit more informed with Andrew Friedman of like, hey, this is kind of coming down the pipeline. What do you think? And Friedman has said repeatedly that he'll go to, the clubhouse leaders to get their temperature on guys, just even if it's, hey, you play against him. What is it like competing with him? What have you noticed? This and that. So I'm sure that they obviously had an idea of a general sense, at least, of where negotiations were.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and obviously these are guys, he's a free agent. So like there wasn't tampering rules about what could and couldn't be said. Dave Roberts could answer questions about him. Obviously, Justin Turner, these are guys that have relationships with him. Now, who knows? They've obviously played at All-Star games before. Freddie Freeman's a first baseman. So every time a Dodger gets on base, they're chatting with Freddie Freeman for a few minutes, So obviously these guys have some form of relationship. They've played against each other for a number of years. So we knew there was a little bit of recruitment. And one thing that was fascinating was the other piece of this is Freddie Freeman's a Southern California guy. Orange County, I believe, is where he grew up. And as I said, there's only one real baseball team in the Southern California region. So this was a no-brainer for a Southern California kid on which team he wanted to go to. Apologies only to our Angels friends at our sister website over there. But yeah, but then there were reports like his wife wants to stay in the South, and like then it's all these different things, and so he gets to stay local, which I love, and it's a good dude. Andrew Friedman has. Well, I was going to say, he has valued the clubhouse in every move he has made. He's valued the clubhouse in every move except for one move that he has ever made. And so I think that matters. I think going and getting a guy like Freddie Freeman, who is a leader, who is well respected by literally everybody, and just culturally, like, couldn't you see Justin Turner and Freddie Freeman hanging out? Couldn't you see Clayton Kershaw and Freddie Freeman hanging out? Like, I just think he fits in a way where it's not like this young team and the 34-year-olds coming in and it's like, how's this going to go? Or the opposite of like, it's some 24-year-old you're dropping into a clubhouse of veterans. I think Freddie Freeman culturally, demeanor-wise, personality-wise, etc., just seems like this is going to fit like a glove. Okay, one of the questions we had in here, we'll get to a few more. Gushy XR7 says, who's going to close games for the Dodgers? Blake Trinan is the guy that's penciled in. Obviously, there's been some chatter about whether or not he's going to be used as a closer. What are you hearing on that front?
Yeah, so Dave Roberts on one hand said if he had to pick one, it probably would be Trinan. But then he also came back and sort of contradicted himself and said, like, we probably would just approach it by committee right now, at least with the current roster. And that's because, like, which Dave Roberts has touched on last season, they value Trinan in kind of the fireman role of being able to pitch, basically from the fifth inning on, depending on whatever the situation is. And so I think that's where the Dodgers, at least for now, are going to stand. Maybe Daniel Hudson is kind of then given the sort of de facto closer role because he strikes me a little bit more as of a 7, 8, 9 inning type guy. But yeah, I mean, Trinan can close, but they don't want to, kind of officially anoint him the closer because of the versatility.
It did feel like Major League Baseball is moving away from at least a certain segment of Major League Baseball to which the Dodgers belong, seemed to be moving away from the traditional closer, but it felt like Kenley Jansen's presence was the only thing that was sort of keeping that from happening because he was a guy that, stubborn maybe is the best word. Like he just wanted to be the closer. And you saw the times when he was removed from that role, he was not happy about it. And, he didn't necessarily have a desire to hide that he was not happy about it. And so I think with him gone, it's unfair to assume the Dodgers will just treat the next guy the way they treated Jansen. Because I think they have Trinan, who's used to not necessarily being the closer in Los Angeles, seems comfortable in that role. And so, like you said, with a guy like Daniel Hudson, with a guy like Trinan, with the guy like Gratterall, with a guy like Vesia from the left side, like you can just sort of work matchups a little bit, use Trinan in the highest leverage situations, and then trust that you've got 3 or 4 guys behind him. Caleb Ferguson, Tommy Kahnle, when they come back, Phil Bickford. Like you can just trust Trinan. Okay, we got runners on second and third with 1 out, and we're up by a run in the 7th inning. Boom, you bring Trinan into that situation and say, we'll worry about the 9th when we get there. We've got enough guys that we trust. And so, absolutely, I think, my guess is Trinan gets the most saves. I think, do you agree with that? He leads the team in saves. But
yeah, I think so. And I think, the Dodgers could, if they do end up approaching it by committee for the rest of for the season, will they be, kind of best team to have 4 or 5 pitchers with 6, 7, 8 plus saves. I mean, that's usually something you only see on teams that are struggling, right? And just trying to find what they have. So that'll just be kind of funny to see that sort of.
Yeah. How many relief pitchers have 5? I was going to say, how do the Dodgers get a second guy with double-digit saves for sort of non-injury reasons? But I think you're right. I think Daniel Hudson would be the other guy that I would pencil in. And again, maybe Gratterall, Vesia. Those would be the 4 because I think Vesia, if you want to, if there's a situation coming where it's like, hey, let's go lefties here. I think Vesia would be a guy that makes sense. Obviously, Gratterall, if he ever figures out a breaking ball, is going to be unbelievable and impossible to hit. And then, Daniel Hudson has been there. He got the final out in the World Series a few years ago. So he is not afraid of the big moments there as well. Dylan, I believe is what that's pronounced as. Who do the Dodgers go after next? We've kind of touched on Kenley Jansen. Are there other names out there, Matt, that you think the Dodgers kick the tires on, whether it's via free agency or via trade? Do they need a bench bat? Hanser Alberto, our boy, if you missed our video breaking down Hanser Alberto and his unique approach to baseball, Check that out on our YouTube channel, Dodger Blue 1958. But what do you see? Do you see the Dodgers making more moves? They have a full 40-man. They're going to have to release somebody to make room for Freddie Freeman. So do you think they're done? You think this is the opening day roster?
I think it's pretty much set. I mean, like I touched on earlier, if there's an opportunity to offload some money, whether it be an AJ Pollock, maybe a David Price, then I think they'd be open to doing that now with the commitment to Freeman and Trey Turner being eligible for free agency after this season, and Bellinger and Buehler, and Urias down a couple years away. But if not, I mean, like we were saying before the Freeman signing, that you can go into the season with this roster and be comfortable. So now you've added a former MVP winner, a perennial All-Star. You're fine. You line it up and you get to, the trade deadline, figure out where your holes still kind of are, and then you address them then.
It's worth pointing out as well, and I can never figure out, baseball makes this impossible. Guys like Dustin May will get put on the 60-day injured list at some point. I think it's usually when spring training starts, camp opens, something like that. So I think it's at some point in the next week or so. Is that right?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if maybe spring training games needed to start, but I'm pretty sure I saw the Angels today transfer somebody to the 60-day IL so they could make a signing. So my guess is that, that procedural move is available, and the Dodgers have, like you said, Dustin May who can do it. Maybe Ferguson or Canley. Dave Roberts did say that neither one of them are going to be ready for opening day. But if you do the 60-day, then that obviously rules out 2 months. So I don't know if they necessarily want to commit to something like that.
Yeah,
but,
and I wonder, does David Price end up on the 60-day IL at some point? Or even, they protected 5 guys in the Rule 5 draft, and you want to help their development, but does one of them have a mystery 60-day IL trip where they're just sort of working out on the side? I mean, not that the Dodgers would ever do anything beneath him. No, absolutely. Every guy who's ever gone on the injured list for the Dodgers, real injury. Okay, don't mishear me on that one. Let's see if we've got any other questions. We're down to go. We got a good crowd here. Gray asks, at Trey Turner, we've kind of beat around the bush on this one. We know he's under contract for a year. I'll phrase it to you this way, just to make things a little bit more spicy here, Matt. The Dodgers, by my estimation, in the next 3 years, have 4 guys that they've got to have to make contract decisions about. Trey Turner, Cody Bellinger, Julio Urias, and Walker Buehler. Without making you list out all 4 in one way or the other, where does Trey Turner rank amongst that group? Obviously, it's harder to compare pitchers to hitters, but you got to imagine that Andrew Friedman is not planning to give all 4 of those guys, because if Buehler and Urias stay healthy for the next, again, I think Urias and Bellinger are free agents in 2 years, and maybe Buehler is a free agent in 3 years. I could have those mixed up. Maybe it's Bellinger in 3 years and Buehler and Urias in 2 years. I can go back and check. But where does Trey Turner's sort of rank as a priority compared to those other guys?
I would put him in the middle with those guys. And whether that's second or third, I will let our viewers
is Buehler first?
Debate and decide.
Okay.
Probably. And then it depends on the rest of the roster when the time. I mean, it's tough to say, right? Because as much as we can kind of speculate and say, yes, he needs to be a priority, he's, obviously one of the best shortstops in baseball and this and that. You don't necessarily know what the entire landscape is going to be when the time comes for each of these guys. Obviously, Trey Turner's clock is going to be first. So the Dodgers could very well sign him to either an extension during the year, even though I don't see that happening now, or get him to free agency, re-sign him at that point. And you're able to kick the can down the road a little bit because the other guys are still going to be going through arbitration. But then, 3 years from now, maybe one of them, really takes off and you make a decision, okay, that's who we want to end up locking up long-term at that point. I mean, it's difficult.
It's an impossible question because I just named 4 guys that are among the best players in all baseball. I think it's easy to forget Trey Turner led all of Major League Baseball in wins above replacement last year, according to Fangraphs. Literally number 1 in all of baseball in that category, which is a category that measures your overall contribution. Now, it was lower if you look at Baseball Reference, and it depends. And how is his speed and how is his defense? How are those things going to sort of last throughout the end of his career? But I wonder if there's segments of the population, and I don't think you are one of them, that just underappreciate how freaking good Trey Turner is. He is elite. And if Corey Seager just got 10 for 325, now, does he benefit from that contract and say, well, that's the starting point? Does he get hurt by the fact that there's not going to be a bidding war between, there's not all these shortstops out there and you have to make your pick? Who knows? But
I'll throw this out at you too. The Shredder, MLB Network,
Yeah.
the Shredder is doing their rankings at each position, and shortstop was up tonight. The Shredder, which is an analytical monocle that looks at the past 3 years and takes into account a bunch of different stats. Mike Petriello, Sarah Langs, and Vince. His name, last name escapes me. It's with a G. Generano. I don't want to mispronounce it. All of them had Trey Turner ranked.
Was he number one? Tatis?
He was not. Let me see. I could pull. Tatis was
pre-motorcycle, broken wrist, out for 3 months. Tatis.
Yeah, because I think these were Petriello did allude to when the series started that they recorded them like a month ago, and they obviously had to sit on it until the lockout ended. So the Shredder had Trey Turner second and Corey Seager fifth. Vince Gennaro had Turner second, Seager sixth. Sarah Lang had Turner second, Seager fourth. Petriello.
So is Tatis number one on every list?
Yes, the Shredder, and then all three analysts.
Okay,
had Tatis
and then who? So
first.
one Langs, I think you said she had one other person besides Tatis ahead of Trey Turner.
She had
Sorry.
Let me go into our website. I'll pull it up for everybody. Just bear with me.
I mean, again, I just think it puts. I mean, you got 4 people saying he's either the second or third best shortstop in all of baseball, behind Tatis, who might be one of the 3 best players in all of baseball.
Yeah, so here we go. So Mike Petriello had Carlos Correa the second best.
That's offensive.
And Trey Turner third.
I'm offended on behalf of everybody here.
And then the other 2, and then Turner.
Does Correa know what pitch is coming in Petriello's model, or? Okay, fair enough.
He didn't
fair
specify.
enough. Here we go. Under the sea, ranked those. He's got Walker Buehler number 1, Julio Urias number 2, Trey Turner number 3, Bellinger number 4. We've got its stud, got Buehler, Turner, Urias, Bellinger. So we got back-to-back Buehler first, Bellinger fourth, and then some mixed up in the middle there.
You know what's interesting with that is if you want to throw a wrench into it, because I was thinking, Buehler for me probably would be number 1, but if it gets to a point where you have Ryan Pepio and Bobby Miller who have developed the way that they are kind of expected to, I could very well see the Dodgers saying, well, you know what, sorry, Walker, thank you for your contributions. If you can't, if we can't come to terms with you, we have these other power right-handers coming, so let's re-sign Julio instead from the left-hand side because we have right-handers in the pipeline. I mean, so that's what I'm saying. It could go any which way, right? Or maybe one of those prospects gets traded.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because I had meant to say that a few minutes ago. The Dodgers farm system is far deeper in pitching than it is hitting prospects. Obviously, you've got Gavin Lux, who's not technically a prospect anymore. You've got Michael Busch, who's probably going to be at the major league level. You've got a few guys that they just protected in Vivas and Eddie Leonard and James Outman. But none of those guys are necessarily Jacob Amaya, the other one. But none of those guys are necessarily none of those guys will ever in their careers crack a lineup like the Dodgers are going to put out this year. I don't think any of the guys I just mentioned, you're sort of penciling in. Maybe Michael Busch, but aside from him, you're not penciling in all-star games for any of those guys at any point in their career. Whereas on the pitching side, you've got Bobby Miller, you've got Ryan Pepio. And I guess I should say, we've got Miguel Vargas as another name, Andy Paje. So they have a couple hitting prospects that are maybe 2 or 3 years away. But from a pitching perspective, you've got Bobby Miller, you've got Landon Knack, you've got Ryan Pepio. You've got these guys that are pushing for at the major league level in the next 18 months. And so I think it's a fair point where the Dodgers need might be greater on the offensive side as a Muncy starts to age out, as a Justin Turner type starts to age out. Obviously, Mookie Betts is going to be here for the rest of our lives, which is a great thing. AJ Pollock is about to age out. So you've got some room for where these guys are going to be. I mean, again, all we know is that Freddie Freeman's here for the next 6 years. Mookie Betts has got, 8 more years left on his contract. Will Smith will be here forever, praise the Lord, and the rest we'll figure out for over the next few years from there. But I think it's a fair point. So there we go. We got Jason's got Walker 1, Julio 1A, Trey a distant third. 3 Trey, and then a distant fourth is Cody Bellinger. And again, this isn't like a negative on the guy who's 4. It's more of we're talking about 4 of the best players in all of baseball, and I asked a question which you had to choose. So,
well, I mean, and let's even say that Cody Bellinger sort of, maybe he doesn't get back to the MVP level,
Totally.
is still productive. Like the Dodgers could find themselves in a position where you're not having to, shell out the type of contract you would have thought 2 or 3 years ago. And that's not necessarily what we want, because that would mean Bellinger hasn't, achieved his full potential like we once saw. But I mean, that's another, wrinkle that you can't necessarily predict. I'm somebody who's higher on him than some of our viewers have been. I correctly predicted, I want to point out, that he would make positive impacts in the postseason last year.
I don't know. I probably said really nice things about Cody Bellinger. I'm sure I said really nice things about him right before he had the game-winning hit.
I think, like we said earlier, Freeman coming on will help take some of the pressure off him. He'll be another year removed from his shoulder surgery, so there's reason to be optimistic.
Jonathan Nelson's in the chat saying, commenting on that we're not smiling enough. Jonathan, we've been live for about an hour and 7 minutes, so apologies if the cheek muscles have started to slow down a little bit. It's been a long day. It's been a great day, but it's been a long day. So there we go. Let's take a few more questions and then we'll let folks go. Again, we appreciate everybody who's watching. Please subscribe, ring the notification bell if you're on YouTube. Dodger Blue 1958. We've got an unbelievable season obviously ahead of us. Spring training starts in just 2 days, and so you're gonna have real live baseball. We'll have video clips up on the YouTube channel. We'll be breaking down all the action. Some people have pointed this out. One of my favorite things about the next 2 or 3 weeks is a lot of these young guys that we mentioned. You're going to get to see Andre Jackson and Mitch White and James Outman and Michael Busch and those types of players actually competing in a spring training setting as the older guys sort of ease themselves into a spring training and sort of work themselves out. And so, if you're not one of the folks that's dialed into the prospects and stuff, these next few weeks going to have unbelievable content here letting you know about, is Michael Busch ready to contribute in 2022? That's a big question, because all of you are old enough to remember last year when it was Billy McKinney, who, by the way, Billy McKinney, my goodness, the guy couldn't even get a major league deal. He signed a minor league contract with the A's. It's like this guy was playing meaningful moments for us in the postseason last year, couldn't even get a major league deal. But Zach Rex, DJ Peters, who's in Korea, I believe. And so anyways, I think, is Michael Busch ready? That's a big question that we'll hopefully get some answers to over the next few weeks.
Really quick on McKinney, him and the Cubs signed somebody like right as the Freddie Freeman stuff was heating up, and all I could think about was this is like a 5 p.m. Friday news dump that organizations try to get out and hope that people just won't see. And really quick too, because I know we have a lot of new viewers. If you want great prospect information, let's direct them to @FutureDodgers. Justin Lorber, we've had him on with us several times. He knows his stuff. Prospects is admittedly not my strength. So find him on Twitter @FutureDodgers, and I'm sure a lot of you are probably already following us on Instagram and Twitter as well, but we're @DodgerBlue1958, which is the same as our YouTube channel.
Absolutely. The one other thing that we should mention, there was some big news with a former Dodger today, Jock Peterson, signing with the San Francisco Giants. I posted on Twitter. It got a big meh from me. Your thoughts, Jock Peterson? Like, are your feelings hurt that he signed? Obviously, he's from the Bay Area.
No, honestly, more than anything,
$6 million, I think, is what he got.
Look, Jock, 1 year, but he doesn't strike me as the type of player that Farhan Zaidi would want to sort of put on his roster. I mean, the versatility is. I mean, yes, he can play multiple outfield positions, but we've seen him struggle against left-handed pitching. Now, all of that being said, I have gone on the record multiple times and said if I were the Dodgers, I would sign him, solely understanding that the value is going to come in the postseason. So maybe that's the play that Zaid is betting on.
What do you think Jock Peterson's OPS was last year? If you had to guess. On-base percentage plus slugging percentage.
So,
regular season.
Season?
Just regular season.
Like,
let's see. On-base plus slugging. It was better than that.
Oh, okay. Okay, then I'll give him
732 in 418 at-bats. So you're looking at like a 300 on-base percentage and a 430 slugging percentage. That is like very average at best. The year before, it was actually 682. That was his last year for the Dodgers. And so, look, I love Jock Peterson, the person. He contributed to the Dodgers winning the World Series. So, like, shout out to Jock Peterson, forever a Dodger legend. But, like, Jock Peterson in 2022, I'm not that worried. Like, someone's like, you're going to be worried when he's facing the Dodgers. I'm like, I don't know. Alex Vesia versus Jock Peterson? Who do you like in that matchup? I like Alex Vesia in that matchup. Give me the lefty on lefty with Jock. Again, I love Jock. I'm not trying to be negative here. But when he signed with the Giants, I was like, okay. Like if he's an everyday outfielder for the Giants next year, like that makes me less worried about the Giants than I was.
Let's since we're on the Giants and obviously, let's expand, keep it in the NL West. What about the Rockies signing Chris Bryant? I mean, look, for Chris Bryant, great. To me, it comes
Yeah.
as he just took the money and fine. Like that's your prerogative. That's what you choose to do. Great. But like we tweeted from the account, what's the over under on how many years until the Rockies have to trade him? We put it at 3.5, and we had a ton of people saying
no
they're
trade
taking
clause,
the
Matt.
under.
Come on, no trade clause. To me, I just laughed. Okay.
Yeah,
Obviously, the comical part is they gave Chris Bryant basically all of the money that it would have cost them to just keep Nolan Arenado. Now, the flip side is they did get a boatload of prospects in exchange for Nolan Arenado, so they essentially get Chris Bryant and prospects for Nolan Arenado. Whatever. So, like, if you want to make that work, Nolan Arenado, again, is like the Freddie Freeman of Colorado, and so you lose the goodwill with fans, etc. The part that killed me was everyone was like, I wish I could just ask Chris Bryant, why would you do this? Why would you sign with the Rockies? Why would you sign up for this? I'm like, it's really freaking simple. Did you see the contract that he signed? Like, it's not like you do not need to be a rocket scientist to understand why Chris Bryant signed with the Rockies. They gave him a crap load of money, and good for him. Like, the reality is, how many teams are truly competitive? Like, everyone's like, why would you go there and know you're going to lose? Guess what? Every team but one loses every single year. And in a 6-year period, at most 6 different franchises are going to win. That means 26 out of 32 have 0% chance of winning in a 6-year period, right? And that's assuming there's no repeat. So chances are you're not going to win. You might as well go play in a place. They said Colorado's close to Las Vegas, where he's from. It's a beautiful place. He gets paid a ton of money. Like, to me, like, more power to you, Chris Bryant. Like, go for it. Like, is this worse than going and signing with the White Sox or the Cubs or the Tigers or like, like, I don't know. What are the alternatives?
Well, hey, those are Joe Kelly's
like
White
Seattle.
Sox
Like, he was rumored to
about.
Seattle. Look, I love Seattle, but it's like, I mean, do you really want to go play in the AL West like constantly? I don't know. Like, look, Seattle better than Colorado, but is it $30 million? Like, I'll take $30 million less better? Probably not, So, all right.
Yeah.
I think that's it. I think we've covered it. Freddie Freeman is a freaking Dodger, Matt. 6 years, $162 million. The Dodgers this year will be trotting out a lineup that features Trey Turner, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Justin Turner, Cody Bellinger, Max Muncy, Will Smith. Can't forget about Will Smith. AJ Pollock.
I was wondering when you were
AJ Pollock. Chris Taylor. Did I already say Chris Taylor? They're loaded. They're absolutely stupidly loaded. They've got 2 of the 10 best pitchers in baseball in Walker Buehler and Julio Urias. They've got Clayton Kershaw, who, if he's healthy, is one of the best 15 to 20 pitchers in all of baseball. They've got Blake Trinan, who's probably one of the 5 to 10 best relief pitchers in all of baseball. They've got young guys like Will Smith and Brusdar Graterol and Alex Vesia and, it's just everywhere. This team is loaded. This team is stacked. Last year, I remember sitting here and saying the Dodgers have the best rotation maybe of all time. Obviously, it didn't play out that way. Trevor Bauer misses half the season. Clayton Kershaw gets hurt. Now we're sitting here saying legitimately might be one of the best lineups ever assembled. Top to bottom with the universal DH in it now. It's unbelievable. So,
well, I know we said it tongue-in-cheek a couple videos ago, but at this point, you legitimately could set the Los Angeles Dodgers as the National League roster for the All-Star game at Dodger Stadium this year, and they would probably be able to compete with the American League.
I mean, like, there is not a single guy in the starting 9 who, if I told you they were an All-Star, you'd be shocked. Chris Taylor is probably the 9th best hitter in that group, but he was an All-Star last year. Like, AJ Pollock probably would be the most surprising, but I would say...
Well, probably Bellinger would, only because he's coming from such a down.
I mean, and obviously, if you want to take into account fan vote, Bellinger probably going to get voted on a ton of ballots. But Will Smith, probably a favorite to be one of the 2 catchers in the National League on the roster. Freddie Freeman will be a favorite. I think Max Muncy, if he's playing second base, I mean, that's a much better position to try and get to the All-Star game than I would imagine than first base. Trey Turner, favorite at shortstop. Justin Turner, Cody Bellinger, probably sort of the reputation. They're not going to be... Justin Turner will not be the best third baseman, but who knows? Maybe he gets there on reputation. It's in LA. AJ Pollock, again, unlikely, but the year he had last year, he's one of the best hitters in all of baseball. Cody Bellinger, reputation. Mookie Betts, a favorite. So, I mean, and now we're not even... Then you're talking Buehler, Urias. I mean, Kershaw has to be an all-star, right? Like, as long as he's like,
definitely
healthy and, like, above average. He has to be an all-star. He has to.
I mean, I think, look, the easy way to say it, sorry not to cut you off, is that if he's healthy, he will be above average. Like it's that simple. Like there's no, and I know that you didn't mean to question it, but I think like some of our viewers and some of the questions we've got about him over the past week or so and just during the offseason, look, like I get that it's fine. It can be reasonable to question if he will be healthy. That is fair. Okay. But let's say he is. He is saying he is, so let's take him for his word. If he remains healthy, he will be a quality starting pitcher for the Dodgers this season.
And the All-Star game's in Los Angeles. Like, make him the starter, baby. Make him the starter. It's unlikely. The Dodgers, unfortunately, won't be managing. Dave Roberts doesn't get to make that decision. But, I mean, Treinen, again, I think Treinen would be like a shock to not be in an All-Star game. I shouldn't say a shock. I think it would be a surprise. Maybe a slightly toned downward. So, anyways, thank you. All the folks, Gary, Bellsboy, Jesse, Jonathan, Gary A., Jesus, Art. We appreciate you all joining us on Facebook, on YouTube. Again, if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Dodger Blue 1958. Ring the notification bell. We got tons of content coming every day of the week. We've got long-form shows that'll be starting every Monday. We've got live post-game shows that'll be starting every Friday, and we do have an exciting announcement that is coming in the next week or so, so stay tuned for that. But we appreciate you subscribing, the notification bell. As Matt said, Dodger Blue 1958 everywhere on social media, DodgerBlue.com. And hey, if you've enjoyed the show tonight, please give Matt a follow at mmoreno1015 on Twitter. You can follow me at Jeff Spiegel on Twitter as well. We'd appreciate that. Thank you, Freddie Freeman, a freaking Dodger. Dodgers are going to be here for a while. We appreciate you joining us. We'll see you next time.